Make some gorgeous wrist strap key rings with me. Perfect to wrap around your wrist so that you're hands-free carrying your keys or anything else. I used it when I was teaching for my whistle for playground duty. They make perfect gifts for other people and they're super simple to make. To make your wrist strap keyring, you're going to need the pattern piece and some craft scissors to cut it, some cotton fabric and some fabric scissors, a coordinating thread. I use embroidery snips to cut my threads at the machine, either some pins or some sewing clips to hold your fabric together, and a 1-inch lobster clasp. I'm also using my mini iron and my ironing board. The pattern piece itself is actually only half the size, so this shape indicates what it's going to look like once you have cut your fabric. So this is half. You will cut your fabric on the fold and therefore will have a rectangle twice as long as this one. So I'm going to use my fabric scissors and cut around the edge of the dotted line. Now that I've got my pattern piece cut, I'm going to prepare my fabric. So we need to cut one of those pieces from a piece of fabric that is cut on the fold. So I'm going to open my fabric out to begin with. As you can see, I'm using an offcut. I'm just going to switch it around that way, I think. And then I'm going to fold my fabric piece, not in half because I might be able to use this for something else, but just big enough so that I can fit my pattern piece on top. So this part of the pattern lies on the fold and the rest of it lies flat. Once there, you're going to use some pins to pin the pattern piece to your fabric. Alternatively, you could draw around the pattern piece and carefully cut out. But when there's a double layer, I would recommend you pin instead. Pinning around the pattern piece ensures that you're more likely to get a straight edge, so don't underpin. Make sure you're pinning right along the edge, and the more the better, really. We can now use our fabric scissors to cut our fabric out. So when cutting fabric, always cut away from yourself. So rather than cutting up here and then turning my wrist to go round, it is much better to cut up the side, then spin your fabric round, cut up the next line, and so on and so on. When using fabric scissors, they've got a nice long blade and they're super sharp. Try and open the blade as wide as you can when you're cutting so that you get a nice long straight line instead of just a little cut like that, which is more likely to give you a jagged edge. So rest your blade against the table and take a long cut. Cut all the way around your shape and then we're ready to start. We're now ready to construct our wrist strap keyring. So when talking about fabric, you might hear me refer to the right side of the fabric and the wrong side of the fabric. So the right side just means the side that should be on the outside, so the front of the fabric. The wrong side of the fabric means that I'm referring to the back of the fabric. So we're going to start with our fabric right side down, and then we're going to fold it in half lengthways. So match up your edges at the bottom, give it a slight finger press so that your fingers don't need to be close to the iron, and then you're just going to iron a crease along that line there. So we've now got a halfway mark to aim towards. We're going to open that out, and then in turn the top is going to come down to meet that line and the bottom is going to be folded up to meet that line. So I'm going to fold this bottom edge up. So I'm going close to that guideline but not all the way. I'm only about 1 millimetre away. And again, we're just going to iron that crease in place. And then you'll repeat that process for your top edge as well. So fold it up towards that center line that you created. Little finger press so that we don't need to have our hands near the iron. And iron it into place. Once that is done, we can then fold these two edges together. So again, we're lining up those two edges and then giving our project one final press. So if you were ever to make your own bias binding, this would be a similar process. The next job is to take our lobster clasp. There's a D-ring at the bottom of it, and we just feed our fabric through the lobster clasp. For this step, we're going to carefully open up our short ends. So I just put my scissors there to keep that open so you can see. Each short end needs to open up, and then you are going to position those two short ends together with the fabric right sides together. So I'm just going to hold this way. It's almost like a little dicky bow. And I'm just going to hold those two short ends together, right sides together, so I can only see the wrong side of the fabric, and then either pin or clip those two edges together. What you will then do on the sewing machine is we'll position it that way as it goes into the machine. You're going to just do a reverse stitch, sew down to the bottom and reverse stitch again. That will be with a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Before sewing anything on my machine, I like to check that my top thread and my bobbin thread are talking nicely to each other and creating neat stitches. So to do that, I get a scrap of fabric, I fold it in half to replicate the two layers I'm going to be sewing, slide it underneath and trap my fabric. I then just take some stitches across and check. So what we're looking for is stitches that look even on the top and stitches that look equally even at the bottom. If you have a line with some little raised dots on it instead, then your tension isn't quite right. So either change your tension disc, mine is on 4 for cotton, or just rethread your machine, and quite often that will solve your problem. I'm going to slide my project underneath the presser foot. I can remove this clip now that I'm here, and I'm aiming for a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So for that, it's just slightly wider than my presser foot. I'm going to reverse. So for me, I have a reverse button up here. Some of you may have a lever that you have to press down and hold. So quite firmly press it down and hold to go backwards. And when you release it, you will go forwards again. So it's the same with my button. It's just not quite as labour intensive. So I've reversed up towards the edge of my fabric, and now I'm going to sew across those short edges, removing the clips as I go. I can just feel that that fabric has ridden up underneath, so just make sure it's flat. And then once you get to the end of your fabric, make sure you reverse for 2 or 3 stitches to secure. It's the equivalent of tying a knot. Then remove your project from the machine. Cut your threads out over to the side, so make sure you have a thread or a tail, of fabric. A tail of thread. This then goes underneath and out the back, and you can cut your threads at the other end too. So make sure you have a 1 centimetre seam allowance across your 2 short ends. After sewing, you're then going to open up your seam allowance and then just give it a little press. A finger press will do. If not, you can use your iron just to keep it open. And then you need to carefully fold your edges in so that it resembles the shape you had to start with. So I can still see my fold lines from earlier. So I'm carefully putting that over first on that side, making sure that's still open. And then I'm folding that one back into position as well. And then once those are done, I can then fold it in half again to hide those raw edges, just as we did earlier. So that's why that first press was really important, to make sure that we got a nice crisp edge to follow at this stage. So my lobster clasp has just hidden inside, so I'm going to spin that round to the outside. And then using my iron, I'm just going to set those creases again. Turn it around so that the piece that was under the lobster clasp gets a bit of a press as well. So we've now got something resembling what we need to have for our finished project. We're now going to do 2 lines of top stitching. One will go down this side all the way round in a loop, and one will go down this side all the way round in a loop. Top stitching means you're stitching about 1/2 centimetre in from the edge, so you're close to the edge, and then you're just sealing those kind of sides together. So I would start on your open side first to make sure that is closed up. So I'm going to start on this side, I'm going to start sewing and go all the way around in a loop, and then I'll move over to the other side and repeat that process. I'll show you a tip at the machine to help you get the best results. Lots of the machines have a section at the front that you can actually remove to make this next step easier. So with my machine, this piece slides out to the side and can come off. This gives me a smaller area here that I can slide my wristband onto. So I would slide the arm of my machine through the wristband itself. Now, if you either don't have a removable piece or your wristband is too small to fit around the arm of your machine, what you'll need to do instead is position your fabric underneath as you would usually. We're just aiming for a 1/2 centimetre seam allowance, so I'm going quite close to the edge. And just make sure that this stays in the air at all times so that you haven't trapped it underneath and you're not sewing the two together. I'll continue to use this method in case you can't open your machine, but I'm just going to start stitching and go round in a complete loop until I reach back from where I started. I'm going to move the D-ring out of the way as I go. So I'm not reversing to start this time, just because I'm going to finish at the same spot. So I'm getting close to my machine, slide the D-ring, give myself a nice straight line to go. I'm guiding the fabric through the machine, moving the D-ring or the lobster clasp. Again, slide that out of my way and continue. Now I can see I'm nearly back to where I started. So I'm just going to carefully make sure that I overlap those stitches by a couple of stitches myself. And then I'm going to reverse for a few stitches to secure my ends. And you're done. Slide it out, cut your threads off, and repeat the process for the other side. Once you're done with the top stitching, give your wrist strap a press. Everything always looks more professional when that's done. And then I'm going to find the join that I made originally when I joined those two short edges up. And I'm actually going to sit that underneath my D-ring, because I don't like to feel that on my wrist. So I've got that stitch line sat on top of the D. I'm going to press this so it kind of stays in place. And the final step is going to be to sew across this section here to keep that D-ring in place. So at the machine, you're just going to reverse, sew, reverse, making sure not to catch your D-ring in place. So I'm going to position mine in the machine like this, and the edge of my presser foot will sit along the edge of the D-ring. Position your project under your machine. I'm going to reverse for a few stitches towards the edge and then sew across the front. And then when I reach the edge, a couple of reverse stitches to secure those stitches in place. And you're done. Your project is finished and ready for your keys. Snip all your threads and admire your hard work. Once you start making these keychains, you are not going to want to stop. They are perfect gifts for other people. They are so simple to find in your bag. They are fab for being able to just wrap it around your wrist. So if I'm popping to the shops or when I'm on playground duty, these were the perfect thing for me to use. If you're interested in any of my other free patterns, please go to oodlesofcraft.com and click on freebies to find more. Likewise, you can find my makes on YouTube as well. This particular free pattern was made to coincide with my gorgeous belt bag. If you'd like to see more of my paid patterns, you can also find those on my website.